Every autumn, as the harvest wanes and the nights grow cool, fields across Mexico burst into color. Hillsides and markets fill with blossoms of gold and orange, the marigolds or cempasúchil, their petals glowing like tiny suns in the fading light. Families begin to gather photographs, candles, bread and sugar skulls. They tidy the graves of those they've lost and lay out offerings fragrant with spice and memory. It is the beginning of one of the most beloved and enduring celebrations in the world, Dia de los Muertos, the Day of the Dead. And despite what its name might suggest, this is not a day of mourning. It is a day of laughter and remembrance, a festival that welcomes the spirits of loved ones back home. It is joy painted in bright colors, grief transformed into gratitude. Before we begin tonight's story, take a moment to light a candle or pour yourself a warm drink and settle in. And as always, I'd love to know, where are you listening in from? Leave a comment below and share the corner of the world you call home. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of our journeys through time and tradition here on Holiday History. Now, let us turn back the pages far before Mexico bore its name, to the time of the Aztec Empire, when the rhythm of life and death was seen not as opposition, but as harmony. The world of the Aztecs. Imagine a morning in ancient Tenochtitlan, the Aztec capital. The city glimmers upon a lake, its temples rising like islands of stone and color. Priests in feathered robes carry offerings up steep temple steps as conch shells echo in the air. The people below move through the markets, trading cacao beans, obsidian, and maize. In this world, death was not something distant or feared. It was an ever-present companion. To the Aztecs, life was part of a sacred circle, and the soul's journey continued long after the body returned to the earth. Their entire cosmos was built upon balance, light and dark, creation and destruction, life and death. Every sunrise was born from the sacrifice of the gods. Every harvest depended upon the cycle of decay and renewal. When someone died, their family wept, but not for long. Death was not a tragedy, but a passage, the soul setting out on a journey to the underworld, where it would be tested, transformed, and finally find rest. The destination depended on how one lived and how one died. Warriors who fell in battle became hummingbirds, following the rising sun. Women who died in childbirth, seen as warriors themselves, accompanied the sun as it set. Those who drowned or were struck by lightning went to Tlalocan, the watery paradise of the rain god Tlaloc. But for most, the path led to Mictlan, the vast and shadowed land of the dead. Mictlan, the journey beyond. To the Aztecs, Mictlan was not a place of torment, but of transformation. It lay far below the earth, a realm ruled by Mictlantecuhtli, the skeletal lord of the dead, and his queen, Mictecacihuatl, the lady of the dead. When a person died, their loved ones buried them with offerings, food for nourishment, a bit of jade to symbolize the heart, a knife or tool for protection, and above all, a dog, often represented by a clay figure of the Xoloitzcuintli, the sacred hairless dog of Mexico. This faithful companion would guide the soul across the dark river that marked the boundary between worlds. The journey was long, spanning 9 levels and taking 4 years to complete. The soul crossed mountains that crushed together like jaws, faced icy winds, deserts of obsidian knives, and creatures that sought to devour them. Each trial stripped away what was earthly until the spirit reached the 9th level. A quiet grey plain where Mictlantecuhtli awaited. Here, the soul finally found peace. It was not a heaven nor a hell, but a state of rest, a return to the source. And once a year, under the watchful care of Mictecacihuatl, the spirits of Mictlan were allowed to return to the world of the living. In these ancient ceremonies, we see the first glimmers of what would one day become Dia de los Muertos, the yearly homecoming of souls. The Festival of the Dead. Each year, the Aztecs honored the dead with a grand festival of the ancestors, held for an entire month. The celebrations were joyous and communal, not quiet vigils, but living festivals filled with music, incense, and food. Women shaped small figurines of amaranth dough and honey, decorating them with seeds, the ancestors of today's sugar skulls. Musicians played drums made from hollow logs, and dancers in skeletal masks paraded through the streets, celebrating life's impermanence. The Aztec calendar divided the year into 18 months, and the Festival of the Dead was celebrated during the 9th month, corresponding roughly to what we now call August. The goddess Mictecacihuatl was honored during this time. Offerings of maize, flowers, and carved bones were laid upon altars to thank her for watching over the departed. Children learned the names of their ancestors by heart, repeating them aloud in prayer so that none would be forgotten. Families left offerings in their homes and in the temples, believing that the spirits returned to taste the essence of what was given. The air was filled with smoke and song, not grief, but continuity. To live was to prepare for death, and to die was to return to the great circle of creation. This worldview would endure even as empires fell and new faiths arose. The Spanish arrive. In 1519, everything changed. Spanish ships appeared on the horizon, sails gleaming white against the Gulf waters. Led by Hernán Cortés, the conquistadors arrived armed with muskets, steel, and a determination to conquer both the land and its beliefs. The Aztec Empire fell within just 2 years. The temples were dismantled stone by stone, and Catholic churches rose upon their ruins. The Spaniards brought with them a new religion, Christianity, and with it a new way of viewing death. The Catholic calendar dedicated November 1st to All Saints' Day and November 2nd to All Souls' Day, times to remember the faithful departed and pray for their souls in purgatory. To the Spanish friars, the Aztec festivals of the dead seemed pagan and dangerous. They banned the rituals, destroyed idols, and demanded conversion. But faith, especially one rooted in the land, cannot be so easily erased. The indigenous people began to merge their traditions with those of their colonizers, weaving the two worlds together. Mictecacihuatl became associated with the Virgin Mary. Offerings once made to the gods were now made to the souls of ancestors. The festival moved from the summer months to align with the Christian feasts of November. What emerged was neither wholly Aztec nor wholly Spanish, but something new, something resilient, Dia de los Muertos, a day that carried the spirit of both worlds. A blending of worlds. Through centuries of colonial rule, the Day of the Dead evolved quietly within homes and villages. The church allowed it so long as it was framed as prayer. But in truth, it remained a conversation between worlds. Families would build ofrendas, home altars that combined Catholic symbols, crucifixes, images of saints, with deeply indigenous elements like maize, flowers, and candles. In these altars, every object had meaning. The water quenched the thirst of returning souls after their long journey. The salt purified them. The bread, pan de muerto, baked round with small bone-shaped ridges, symbolized the cycle of life. The marigold, sacred since pre-Columbian times, remained. Its scent and color were said to call the spirits home, guiding them like torches through the night. In rural villages, graveyards would transform into glowing gardens of light. Families cleaned the tombs, spread blankets, and shared food by candlelight. Children played between the headstones while their elders prayed. In the cities, artisans sold sugar skulls molded with smiling faces. Paper banners, papel picado, fluttered in doorways, their delicate cutouts representing the fragile boundary between life and death. Everywhere, the old gods whispered beneath new names. The faith of the people had adapted, but it had never disappeared. The symbols of remembrance. If you were to stand before a traditional ofrenda today, you would see a tapestry of symbols woven from centuries of meaning. At the top rests a crucifix or a saint's image, a sign of faith introduced by the Spanish. Beneath it are photographs of loved ones, framed in candles and marigolds. Each candle represents a soul. The flickering light symbolizes the eternal spark of life that even death cannot extinguish. The pan de muerto carries traces of pre-Hispanic ritual, round to mirror the sun, dusted with sugar to represent sweetness remembered. Small clay cups hold pulque, chocolate or coffee, drinks shared in life, now offered again in love. There may be toys for lost children, cigarettes or tequila for mischievous grandfathers, a favourite scarf or record. Reminders that the departed were once as vividly alive as we are now. The papel picado, its edges catching every breath of wind, represents air, one of the 4 sacred elements. The marigolds stand for earth, the candles for fire, the water in the glass for the rivers that separate the worlds. Together, they create a complete living altar, a bridge between realms. The ofrenda is both sacred and deeply personal, a family's memory made visible. To La Catrina and the Mexican spirit. As Mexico entered the modern age, the Day of the Dead took on new forms. By the late 1800s, European fashions and ideals of sophistication had begun to influence Mexican society. Wealthy families imitated French customs, and some looked down on their indigenous roots. It was then that an artist named José Guadalupe Posada began etching satirical illustrations, skeletons dressed as politicians, musicians, and fine ladies. His most famous was La Calavera Garbanchera, a skeleton woman wearing an elaborate European hat. Posada meant her as a social commentary, mocking those who denied their ancestry in pursuit of European elegance. "We are all the same beneath the skin," he implied. In the end, death equalizes us all. Decades later, muralist Diego Rivera transformed her into La Catrina, regal, elegant, and unmistakably Mexican, in his famous mural Dream of a Sunday Afternoon in Alameda Park. Standing beside Rivera and Frida Kahlo, she embodied the soul of Mexico itself, proud of its past, unafraid of death, and alive with color and humor. Today, La Catrina walks every parade and smiles from every painted face during Dia de los Muertos. She reminds us that death, once feared, can be embraced with grace and laughter. Celebration and continuity. Modern Dia de los Muertos. Celebrations stretch across Mexico and around the world. In Oaxaca, families gather in cemeteries draped with marigolds, the air thick with incense and the sound of guitars. They spend the night beside their loved ones, eating tamales and telling stories until dawn. In Michoacán, on the island of Janitzio, fishermen push out onto Lake Pátzcuaro, each boat carrying a single candle. As night falls, the lake becomes a mirror of stars. In Mexico City, massive parades wind through the streets, filled with dancers in calavera makeup, papier-mâché skeletons towering over the crowds, and music that blends tradition with modern rhythm. Far beyond Mexico, the holiday has found new homes. In Los Angeles and San Antonio, in London and even Tokyo, families of every background build altars to those they've lost. Proof that remembrance is a universal language. The colors may vary, but the message remains the same. Love never ends, and memory is the truest form of immortality. Recognition and revival. In 2008, UNESCO recognized Dia de los Muertos as an intangible cultural heritage of humanity, honoring it as one of the world's great treasures. The designation helped spark renewed pride in indigenous culture and traditions long overshadowed by colonial history. Films, music, and art have since carried the holiday into the global imagination. Yet beneath the bright parades and painted faces lies a tradition still deeply spiritual. For the families who keep vigil each year, the meaning hasn't changed in 1,000 years: to welcome, to honor, and to remember. As the last candles burn low, imagine a quiet courtyard bathed in orange light. The marigold petals shimmer like tiny suns upon the ground. A photograph smiles from an altar beside a cup of chocolate and a piece of bread. Somewhere, a child giggles as her grandmother hums an old song. The air feels thick with presence, gentle, unseen, yet unmistakable. And in that stillness, it is easy to believe that those who came before are near once more, drawn home by love, by memory, by the scent of flowers that never truly fade. That is the essence of Dia de los Muertos. Not a day of sorrow, but a celebration of connection. A time to remember that the boundary between the living and the dead is thinner than we think, and that every act of remembrance is a light against the darkness. So tonight, wherever you are, take a moment to remember someone you've loved. Whisper their name. Light a candle. Let its glow be a bridge across the years. Because when we remember, they live on. In us, through us, and beside us. Thank you for joining me tonight on Holiday History. If you enjoyed this story, please consider subscribing. And don't forget to share in the comments below where in the world you're listening from. Until next time, keep the candles burning, and may the stories of those who came before continue to light your way.